The calendar is flipped to July, which means it's time for our annual summer roster preview series. First up, Mr. James Brown. We're going to see if Papa's got a brand new bag.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Wednesday, July 3rd, 2024. Hopefully you got all your fireworks ready to go for tomorrow. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shea, joined by our man, Coach Pat Kilby, hanging out with me. He's down visiting some family in a different part of Texas and still coming to hang out with us. That's dedication, my man. We're so grateful. You're joining us at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day. Thanks for making us your first listen or watch. Special shout out to all of you everydayers out there and all the members of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So for those of you who are new to the show since last summer or have forgotten, because that's what we do as humans, we forget things because there's so much to remember. Every summer, Pack and I do a roster preview series going player, like week by week, one player at a time to do every player on the roster. So we'll do all 11 scholarship players and then one episode collectively on the Biscuit Boys. And folks, I know it might feel early to start, like it's July 3rd, but going all the way through one player at a time like this, we would do the Biscuit Boys on September 18th. So yeah, it's a good time to go ahead and start doing this. And what we do is we go by seniority. So we'll start with the freshmen. We're going to hit James Brown this week, and we'll move on to Ian Jackson and Drake Powell in the next 2 weeks. And then on from there, Pack. I also think I love this so much because it was like where we started when you were first joining the show. We had a couple other episodes we did, but then we dove into this that first summer that you were joining me. And so it's very nostalgic for me to dive into these together. How about you?
Oh yeah, 100%, man. It doesn't feel, this is our third annual one, and it just does not feel like we've been doing that this long, but that's because it's been fun and enjoyable. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that first summer, the freshmen that we were doing would have been Jalen Washington, Seth Brown, that's a friend of mine, Seth Trimble, Tyler Nickel, and who am I forgetting? Everyone's screaming at us. All right. It's going to come to us as we're recording. Yeah. Everyone just yell it into your phone or computer. Who was the fourth freshman that transferred out? We're idiots for not thinking of it. Anyway, Pat Kilby, James Brown is our first guy. Why don't you start us off? Hit us with a little bio blast on one of the greatest singers of all time.
All right. James Brown, class of 2024. Position is center. From Chicago, Illinois, Chi-Town High School. Most recently played at Link Academy. St. Rita in Chicago is where he played before he went to Link. His AAU team was MoCon. Height 6'9", weight 210 pounds. 4-star consensus. His rankings, ESPN, he was 66th. Rivals was 96th. 247 Sports, 114th. On 3 was 101st. Consensus, 90th overall. Date of commitment was January 2nd, 2023. He chose Carolina over these schools that he took official visits to, which was Missouri, Michigan State, Notre Dame, and Illinois. Twitter handle, James Brown, UNC 13, keeping it real simple. And Insta handle is James Brown, period sign, 13.
Period sign. Did you just call it a period sign?
I did, yeah. I just wanted to make sure people knew it wasn't spelling out period.
P-E-R-I-O. I like that. A little punctuation humor there. Pack, you know what's funny? It occurred to me the fourth freshman that we missed from the class of 2022. Ironic, because as this episode airs, I'm hanging out in Birmingham, Alabama, and that's funny because the player I forgot is none other than Will Shaver. So apologies to Will, but there we go. So Pat, thanks for laying out a little bit of James Brown. Obviously, because of Ian Jackson, because of Drake Powell, James Brown is the least heralded of this incoming freshman class, which, as a reminder, would have also included Elliot Cadeau had he not reclassified. This is a highly ranked freshman class. I believe at 247, they finished 9th, even without Elliot. We just talked about that earlier in the week on the show. But Pat, I think it's fair to say that James Brown is the one of this trio that is the least ready to play right away. You and I just talked about last Wednesday on the show how, as we were recapping the scrimmage from camp last Tuesday, that we thought Ian Jackson and Drake Powell are both ready to step in and contribute in a big way this year right now. With James Brown, I'm not so sure we feel the same way. So, Pac, let me ask you this question. As we forecast this thing out, as we sit here on July 3rd, what do you expect for James Brown in terms of both role and minutes?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny because James is actually coming into a decent situation for himself because, Carolina teams in the past, given where he's at and how Carolina's been loaded with big men in the past, I would have thought, he's going to have to wait his turn, and it's going to be 2 or 3 years, and then he'll be groomed, he'll be ready to go, and then he can play a larger role. But now he has opportunity in front of him because, as we know, Carolina is a lot more guard heavy than they are big heavy this year, especially at the 5. There's Jae'lyn Washington, which is more of I don't even know if you could argue that he's a true 5 because he does have some 4 tendencies to him.
Yeah.
There's Ven-Allen Lubin, who's kind of the undersized fit at 5. And then there's James Brown. And so there is opportunity for him. But to answer your question, for me, my expected role for him is, even though there's opportunity, I still think there's a lot of growth to be had for James. As far as his size and his strength, I think there's improvement that can be made. How he's going to be able to adapt. As far as, you watch his highlight tape, and Isaac, this is something me and you have talked about. He loves to go with his right shoulder and get to his left hand. And that is like his go-to move. And so obviously at the next level, teams are going to take that away. And, for one, he's going to have a hard time posting up at his size. But number 2, to get to that right shoulder, left hand, teams are going to take that away. They're going to make him hit his counter moves and see how he can, perform when he's doing that and pushed away from the thing that he does the best. And so there's a lot of room for growth in my mind. So for me, I think his role is going to be to get into Carolina, to get with Jonas Saration, get stronger, to get faster, to get more explosive, and to be at a level where he can actually get out there and bang with the big guys, and then to experience growth in his skill set and develop. And so it's not to say that we won't use him, because I think that there's a chance for him to play in spurts and get some experience. I just don't foresee it being in a big role at all right now. I think we could see him somewhere between, 4 to 6 minutes a game.
Yeah.
But, in my mind, I think there's a lot of room left for him to grow and develop, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's actually a good thing. Get in here and get better, get your feet wet, and then whenever you're ready to go, you can step in and play a bigger role for Carolina.
I think that's all spot on, Pac. I would put him somewhere in that range of like the amount of minutes that Zayden High was getting last year. I think he will play more than Okonkwo did last year, but I do think he's 11th on the depth chart, similar to what Okonkwo was last year. Agree or disagree with that?
I agree with that.
Yeah. And to as you were talking about, like in previous years, like with a different backcourt arrangement, he wouldn't sniff the floor. Like I was thinking back to the 2020-21 team that had a front court of a young Armando Bacot, Walker Kessler, Day'Ron Sharp, and Garrison Brooks. And you've got, probably wrongly, but probably incorrectly, but you've got Sharp and Kessler coming off the bench. And so I think any opportunities that we're going to have for James this year are going to be just because it's not that type of front court. But the thing, I mean, it's kind of like being vice president. You're just one heartbeat away from being in a much bigger role, right? And so, heaven forbid, knock on wood, I'm doing it right now. Jalen Washington, something happens to him, or Ven-Allen Lubin, James Brown's going to have to be ready because he's going to sniff more minutes. And so it's going to be critical to just attach himself to Sean May like a little puppy dog and find out, what do I need to do to get myself on the floor? So, Pack, great beginning conversation there. What I want to get to now, and you began to touch on it a little bit, but I want to go a little more in depth, is strengths that James Brown brings to the table and weaknesses in James Brown's game right now that he needs to refine so that they're not weaknesses, and try to answer the question, what is it that he can hang his hat on that will allow him to get on the court? So we'll have that conversation in just a second. Right after I tell you about Game Time. Going to Major League Baseball games in the summer is legitimately one of my favorite all-time things to do. The game, the food, everything that's part of the ballpark experience. I'm excited to go make those kind of memories again this summer. In fact, I'm going to the Braves game tomorrow on July 4th. Going to be super fun. But thankfully, I don't have to sweat high-priced last-minute tickets because Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. I looked them up for that game I'm going to tomorrow because I'd love to do that. But what's cool is that prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. So if it was like a last-minute decision, like, hey, let's go to the Braves game or something like that, then we could look and do it on Game Time. The All-Star game's coming up. They're going to have tickets for Game Time on Game Time. I've already gone and seen them. Check it out. Go be part of that. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase because it's killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee. So again, Game Time does that to take the guesswork out of buying tickets. So create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Terms apply. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Pack, we always, when we do these player previews, like to get into the strengths and weaknesses of the player. And the way we like to always frame the strengths with the incoming freshman is this. This player, James Brown, could already play in college because of this skill. What would that be for you?
You know, for me, I think it's his versatility, I think, is where I would want to go with it. And what I mean by that is he's mobile. He runs the floor very well. He's got speed and athleticism for his size. And he's got length that can be great when it, especially for this team, because we do lack like a true rim protector, a true like shot alterer around the rim. And I do think he has a lot of those capabilities and potentials to him. So if I was looking and going, okay, what's the strong suit of his game? Where could he help us? To me, that's it. He's versatile on the defensive end. Okay. He moves his feet well, and he can alter shots.
Now, one of the things for me is rebounding. I've enjoyed watching his rebounding. I think it's going to certainly grow because this is something that Coach Davis is going to harp on. It's a Carolina staple. So he's going to grow, but I've already seen some things with rebounding that it's like, if you're a big and you can rebound, then you're going to stay in the game. I talked, I believe it was last week on the show when we were talking about Malachi Moreno, who's a class of 2025 guy that included Carolina in his top 8. One of the parts of his a recruiter wrote about him, was somebody from a recruiting service, was basically said he's a good area rebounder in his own area, but specifically didn't say anything about his ability to rebound outside of his area. That's something that I think James Brown can do, is rebound both where he is, but also because of that athleticism pack that you talked about, can get outside of his area, go grab a rebound, kick it ahead to start a break or something like that. I mean, some of his college tape, I see him get out or high school tape, get him out leading the break and able to handle and finish like that. Now, he's not going to be doing that for the Tar Heels. I just say that to talk more about his mobility. Pack, is there anything else on the strengths or anything that you see that like sets him apart? Or as you had said to me before, that you want to see, what is it he's going to hang his hat on at the collegiate level?
Yeah, that's a great question. What's he going to hang his hat on? To me, I kind of already mentioned he's got the one move. He loves to go right shoulder and get to his left hand. And so to me, it's if teams take that away, how are you going to help us offensively? James, when I look at his game overall, he's kind of like that in all of his facets of his game. He's good in a lot of areas, but there's nothing that stands out that's just like, bam, that's going to be a strength that translates to the next level for sure. But if I had to pick one, I think you hit the nail on the head earlier really well with rebounding. I think that's something he can hang his hat on for sure. And it's a staple to what we do. It's always going to be. So if you can find something like that, like rebounding, that for one, it's a need. We need that. And number two, it's a staple to what we do. And you can make that something you hang your hat on, then you're giving yourself an opportunity to play more. And so I think that's something. I think, going back to what I mentioned earlier, his ability to alter shots and potentially be an anchor around the rim could be another thing he hangs his hat on. But to me, I think it's going to be really important for him to find whatever it is, find a couple strengths and become great at them so that he can stand out in some areas that would help him.
The nice thing about rebounding is something we always talk about is that's something that translates from level to level to level. And so his ability to rebound in high school should translate to this level. And if he can continue that here at North Carolina, he should be able to take that whatever he does professionally. And so it's like, bro, lean into that. Another thing I think that kind of sets him apart, Pack, is, we talk about players and their ability to finish with either hand. James Brown, though, has like legit ambidexterity. So I read an interview with him a while ago now, where he talks about that he, shoots and does other things with his left hand, but like part of his daily life is a lot of what he does with his right hand, or I might have that backwards. Regardless, he's a legitimate user of both his hands. And that is something that for a basketball player to feel actually comfortable with that, I think is something that can help him stand out and set apart from other players, both in terms of shot blocking and finishing at the rim. So that's just something to watch how that develops for him. Pack, what about the other side of it? What are the weaknesses or the, to put it in like hiring terms, not yet strengths that we'll see? And we always like to frame it this way with the incoming freshman. James Brown won't see the floor much yet this year because fill in the blank.
To me, especially in the position that he's going to be playing, he has to put on weight and strength. And the thing is you have to be very careful about it because you don't want to sacrifice your mobility. You don't want to be slow-footed. You don't want to become slower. We want him to maintain that speed and the explosiveness that he has, but we want him to get stronger and fill out his frame and be able to bang and be that physical presence that we need him to be. And so when I look at weaknesses, that's the thing that stands out. And for me, when I look at it, how does it translate? Can he in ACC play? Can we trust him to go bury someone down low and post up? Not right now. We need to get to a point where we can. Can we trust him to not get buried? Guarding somebody like, I think of Clemson, the PJ Halls and the Shefflin.
Yeah,
Shefflin. Just being able to bang with those guys and not get buried down there by the rim. And right now, I don't feel confident that he can do that. And so we need to get to a point where we do feel confident with that. So for me, I think it's just having him get in the weight room, getting stronger, putting on that weight without sacrificing his mobility and explosiveness.
Yeah. Eddie Lampkin is a great example, who played at Colorado last year, had been at TCU, if I remember correctly, the year before that, is now at Syracuse, Pack. Eddie Lampkin is 6'11", 265. James Brown would get trampled by that, it is what it is. Now, here's what I'm encouraged by. I remember reading an article with some quotes, not from his Link Academy coach, but from his St. Rita coach, who said that he just lives in the weight room, loves to do it. And so I'm encouraged by that, in that James Brown is he knows that he needs to bulk. He knows that he's got to put on this weight. And we've seen other Carolina bigs really lean into that. I think about how Bryce Johnson went from a pencil to still having that lean physique. But man, senior Bryce Johnson, that dude was ripped, my man. And so it's like how much can his frame support? And it's like, as long as he's dedicated to it, which it sounds like he is, and we know, as you said earlier, that Jonas can do that work. And so I'm really interested to see this progression for James Brown. The other question, Pack, that we like to ask on the weaknesses side of it is, if I was an opposing coach, I would exploit. And I think the answer for me to that is something we've already talked about, just forcing him to finish with a move other than getting to that left hand over his right shoulder. Outside of that, anything else you would answer that question of what you would exploit if you were game planning for James Brown?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would potentially add to that, and I guess it would depend on the type of team that I had, but if I had a big man that was truly a back to the basket guy, I would probably exploit that matchup and see if we could take advantage of the lack of strength and size that he is currently needed, to be able to bang at the college level. And so, but the good news is about both of those things, they can be fixed. Those are fixable issues.
Yeah.
That's nothing but getting in the weight room. And like you said earlier, getting with Sean May and adding skill to your game. So those weaknesses, what we consider weaknesses or question marks right now, those can be fixed.
Yeah. I mean, he's given up 50 pounds to an Eddie Lampkin, but what you do is you figure out, all right, so what can I do that he can't? Step out, hit a shot, run around like crazy and make him wear out. So there are ways to counter all of these things, and we'll see how James Brown does that. All right, Pack, one more conversation to have. We want to get into some miscellaneous questions, talk about why we're excited for James Brown, how he fits in with this roster, and try to figure out why he kind of tanked in the recruiting rankings. And we'll get to all those conversations coming up in just a second. Pack, we're talking James Brown here today on the show. Our first of our summer preview series, man. I love it. I'm all about it. Now, we have discussed that we don't think James Brown will play a massive role on this year's team in terms of like minutes played in a game. But that does not mean he will not play a massive role in practice, will not be a massive part of this team, because there's so much more that goes into it than just the finished product that we see in the 40 or so games that we get to see teams play a year. So, Pack, the next question we want to answer is, why is it that we're excited for James Brown? And I think we can answer that question. I think it would be healthy for us to do that in both the short and long term, thinking about his career.
Yeah, I think the long term is his potential is sky high. I mean, he's got a lot of things you can't teach. We've talked about. He's mobile for his size. He runs the court really well, which fits with our system and our love for playing at a fast pace. His length, he's got natural shot blocking ability. He's got natural versatility defensively. So all those things are good. He's got a really good skill set of things that you can't really teach. You just have to have naturally. So those things are good. But like you and I have talked about when it comes to James Brown and a lot of kids on our roster, he's just a Carolina kid. He seems like a natural fit. He's a sharp young man. He's a good young man. We know, I think we can safely say he's going to represent Carolina well. And that, to me, going back to the Dean Smith era, says it all. Those are the types of kids that we want representing our program, and he's going to do just that. So there's a lot to be excited about with this young man being in our program.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about the chemistry that the Tar Heels had last year, you don't want to bring in personalities that are going to jack that up, right? And James Brown, from all accounts, is the kind of young man that's going to come in, contribute. He's a self-professed, I'll do whatever I got to do to help this team win, whatever team I'm on. And this year for him, that might just mean being a really, really helpful practice player who plays spot minutes here and there in a game, but is learning and growing and preparing for what's ahead in the 25, 26, 26, 27 and beyond season, right? It's those kind of things. I love what you said about who he is as a person, Pack. And maybe it seems hokey and outdated, but that's what being a Tar Heel is all about, is these guys that, yes, are phenomenally talented basketball players that are good people who will continue to grow into better people. And that's who Carolina wants. That's who Hubert Davis wants to invest his time in. And so I'm here for it. A couple of the things about him, the player. In high school, there are times when he gets out and shoots the rock. I'm really interested to see, Pack, what level of that we get in college. You know, we're not hearing Hubert Davis say the same things about James Brown that we did about Jalen Washington being one of the best shooting bigs he's ever seen. But on tape, when you see it, he's got a good looking shot. There's nothing mechanically broken about it. I've seen plays where it's like intentionally, he like a dribble, a handoff, runs to the corner, gets it back, and just pulls immediately as soon as he gets it. So there's not hesitation. There's not worry. Seen it gone down. He's ready to fire. So, I mean, if that is something that he could continue to grow and be part of, and Carolina could have a stretch 5 in the next year or two, I think there's something really, really good to that. There is some capability because his ability to get out and run. You know, I think back to Tyler Zeller as a thinner big and the way he would just get out and sprint down the floor. If James Brown could have some of that, even be able to handle the ball a little bit when he has to, I think those are some of the things that excite me about James Brown. Anything else for you, Pat?
No, I think you nailed it on the head. He's got a lot of great qualities.
Well, another question that I want to consider that I don't even know that I have a good answer for, Pat. So I at least want to throw it out there and run it around. When James Brown committed to North Carolina, January 2nd of 2022 or 3, my brain is failing me late at night. 2023. So about, a year and a half ago, as we sit here recording, at that point, he was ranked 27th at 247. He is now tumbled to where at 247, as we record this, he finished 114th in those rankings. And Pat, that's got to have some cause for concern, right?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I mean, is it a concern? Yeah, because obviously in some basketball people's minds, he's falling way down the list. I'm with you. I don't know that there is a justification for it, or a reasoning that I could give you for it. I'm wondering if, maybe he was so far ahead and then other people just kind of caught up and passed over him. But at the same time, I also don't put a ton of stock in the rankings. I know that these rankings are a big deal and they're typically correct. But there's also been some players that have come through Carolina where the rankings weren't correct, and they've made a huge difference. Luke May is a great example of that. Anton Jamison is another example of that. There have been players that were underrated that came in and made a difference. And so while it is a concern, and I don't even have a real big thought process as to why he would have dropped that far, he can still become a really good player for Carolina, despite what any of the rankings say.
Yeah, I like that, man. That's very well said on James Brown. So, folks, that's it. It is our first recruiting show of the summer, or not recruiting, our first player preview show of the summer. Again, we'll be going through the entire roster. The next 2 weeks will be Drake Powell and Ian Jackson. We haven't decided which order we're going to do yet, but those will be the next 2. So we'll be right back with those in the next fortnight of weeks. Pat Kilby, it's good to be doing this again, my man. I love it, and I'm here for it. Folks, if you're not subscribed to the show, please hop in and do that. Very easy to do, both on YouTube and whatever podcast audio platform you utilize. If you're not part of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord family, man, we'd love to have you. Come for the Tar Heels, stay for the community. It's free to join, and the link is in your show notes. We want to remind you that it's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll talk again tomorrow. But until then, peace.